Welcome to our networking Q&A webinar, and thank you for joining. I'm Neha, and I'm on the prep team, and I also have networking expert Kelly Hoey with me. Today, we're going to be talking about networking. We often get questions from our users about networking, so we've reached out to everyone here and asked you to submit your questions. Because this is a webinar and it's only an hour long, and we can't get through all of the questions, but we will talk about things like why networking is important, how to use LinkedIn, and how do you even start networking? So before we begin, I'd like to do a quick round of introductions. So like I said, I'm Neha and I work on the Prep product team. You may recognize me from some of our videos and also our chatbot, but those are just some of my responsibilities here at Prepped. I'm a recent graduate and I started my career at RBC Ventures about a year and a half ago as a summer intern. I fell in love with our co-founders, Laura and Julia, and their mission of helping the next generation get jobs that they're passionate about. So I started doing some small projects with them, and through networking, I worked my way into a full-time position here at Prepped. And now, for the star of the hour, I'd like to introduce Kelly. Kelly is a networking expert. She's written a book, Build Your Dream Network, and she also hosts her own podcast. Kelly has been widely recognized for her work and has received many titles, including One of 5 Women Changing the World of VC Entrepreneurship by Forbes, one of the 10 most well-connected people in New York City's startup scene by Inc., and 100 of the most influential global leaders empowering women worldwide by EBW 2020. Kelly's career story is one of transformation, and it's through networking. She's originally from Victoria, BC, and went to the University of Victoria for her undergrad degree in political science, then at UBC for her law degree before moving to the East Coast. She continued along with her law career path until an opportunity in 2009 encouraged her to stop playing it safe. Working alongside a visionary leader of global business networking for women, co-founding a startup accelerator, angel investing, accepting an interim CMO role with an emerging tech company, these are all part of her career journey. Welcome, Kelly. Now that we know a little bit about each other, let's get started. So for our Q&A, our first question is, can you describe a moment or an event that caused you to realize, oh, networking really does matter and it works?
Oh, well, it's great to be here and thank you for inviting me. I think thinking back on it and knowing we were going to have this conversation today, I recall when I was applying for a part-time job at the Eaton's department store, for those who remember Eaton's, and I was coming down the escalator and the store manager was there and his daughter had babysat. They had been neighbors back in the day, and his daughter had babysat, and it had been probably 12 years, since I had needed a babysitter. And I went up and I introduced myself and said, you won't remember me, but this is who I am. And he asked me why I was in the store. And I told him. I can't say that got my resume off the HR, leaders, the HR directors, pile of resumes, but I got a call for an interview and I got a job. So, thinking back, I'm like, yeah, somewhere inside, I knew that relationships and networks and tapping into things, really mattered. And then I really learned that even more when I finished law school and was applying for articling positions in Ontario. And even though there was a computer matching system to align law school graduates' interests with particular firms and the particular firms' interests with law school graduates, they had a blind matching system so that, to take out bias. But because of relationships and networks, you could get more interviews and get more interest and get people to rank you higher. So, even in systems where, when I think of so many people today are applying for jobs online, the technology may make it easier for you to get your resume in front of a company, but you need a person to move it off of, a website and off of a spreadsheet and into, kind of an interview and a hiring situation. I can go on and on and on with stories because everything in my life, when I think back on it, relationships have played a key part in opening doors and changing my career trajectory.
Perfect. I feel that way too. How do you approach networking?
So I probably approach it differently than other people. I think of networking as every single human interaction. So knowing that on this webinar, we have people who are in university and in college, and they're seeking probably summer jobs, internships, first careers, how you show up for class, how you volunteer, the approach you take to the colleagues in your part-time job, how you stay in touch with, former teachers or professors. All of that to me is networking. And it may seem as a young person, as a college student, that it may seem really trivial because you're maybe thinking about, oh, well, networking, Kelly, that's career fairs, that's interviews, that's informational interviews, that's walking into rooms with business cards. And I'm like, yeah, but you're going to realize when you get on in life that how you show up every day and how you maintain the relationships and how you support the people you already know is far more important and far more determinative of your long-term success than having the perfect elevator pitch for when you walk into a room of strangers.
You're making me re-question my sweatpants in university, but I
think you did. I think you did okay, kid. I think you did okay.
Our next question is, we got a lot of questions about LinkedIn etiquette. So can you speak a little bit to that too?
Yes, I love questions about online networking because for me, online is no different than offline networking. You need to remember that behind every profile is a human being. And how do you approach them? And what is the context in how you're approaching them? Because all you can ever control in networking is your own actions. You can't control what's going on with the other person because you can't know everything that's going on with the other person. Just to kind of pause and say, we all have messy, complicated lives, and not all of us share that, publicly, whether that is publicly with a group of friends or publicly in a Facebook post. So you never do know. So always remember it's a human being. So as I share in my book, I think of LinkedIn like the office. When I get on LinkedIn, I kind of revert to my old lawyer self and feel like I should grab my suit and a briefcase. And I talk about things on LinkedIn in that professional context. I have an obscene obsession with shoes. You don't see that on LinkedIn. You'll have to go over to Instagram for that one. And so Instagram for me is probably a little bit more of a hybrid in terms of how to use it, and understanding the visuals are more important, whereas on LinkedIn it's probably your words that are more important. Then Facebook, kind of think friends and family, and Twitter for me is a cocktail party. So if you think about it in this way, you're looking for a job, you're looking for a job, or maybe you get a job, or maybe you aced a paper at school. Think about it this way. How would you describe landing a job in a professional context, right? How would you describe landing a job if you were sitting around the table, having dinner with your family, think Thanksgiving or something? How do we have those conversations? How would you have that conversation if you showed up in a coffee shop or the student union building to tell your best pals that you landed the job that you wanted? It's the same information, but we share it in different ways. So when you're on LinkedIn, I seriously start your underwear, wear a sharp shirt, it's a professional context, and think about how you would approach that person that you're reaching out to on LinkedIn. How would you reach out to them in a respectful manner? The same way you would if you were sitting across a desk or a table from them, or you were extending your hand at a career fair. Take that same attitude. Picture yourself in that room when you step on LinkedIn.
Thanks. I really like that approach. Our next question is, what are the do's and don'ts of networking?
How long do we have on that one? No, kidding. I'm not. There's so many do's and don'ts. Okay, let me just stick with. I'm going to stick with 3 to keep it simple. Okay. Sure. First is a don't. Don't show up only when you need something. Okay. Everybody can smell people who network that way. And if you're not showing up with your network every day and helping them out and being interested in what's going on in their lives, why should they be interested in you? So don't show up just when you need something. Be someone who's there for your network every single day. Do your homework. And I say that because if you can find the answer on Google for a question that you would ask someone in an informational interview, then get the information there and ask them a better question when you meet them. I get more, like if I ask people in my network, whether they're people who are, I want to say, leaders in their field, people who are hiring, people who, whatever, if I say to them, what's one of your biggest networking pet peeves? This is it. This drives people berserk, like not doing homework. And I had this recently where someone said to me, I know I can read about you online, Kelly, but why don't you tell me about yourself in your own words? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I was like, I almost ended the call because the other person had requested the meeting. So it was not like me reaching out to them asking for something. It was the other way around. And I just about lost my nut. So do your homework before you have that meeting, particularly if you're taking someone else's time to get their expert insights or trying to get a job or trying to get them to give you a strong referral. The other thing is, I would say, as a networking do follow up. And I don't mean this in the networking courtesy of thanks for the informational interview or I appreciate the reference letter. Like, what's the follow-up you can do after that? Because it's that additional contact and finding ways to show the other person that you appreciated the time or that their insights or mentoring led you to, take a different course at university or switch or pivot your career plan, or that their introduction landed you the job, whatever it is, or you saw they were mentioned in the paper, or you saw an article they could have been interested in. That additional follow-up that, you'll know when the right time to do that is, but that additional follow-up, that's the glue. That's the stuff that creates lifelong relationships. That's where you can say years later why somebody's your mentor, because you stayed in touch and you continue to follow up with them.
Great. I see why people find that a little challenging, so it's great to see that it's definitely worth it. Our next question is, what are some networking tips for those who aren't very extroverted?
This may be my favorite question, and you guys know that. So my first advice would be stop worrying about being an introvert. Second is, I think I'm going to make a bold statement on the poor extroverts out there. I think introverts in this day and age make the best network builders. And I say it that way because what we're interested in is building relationships that are long-term and sustainable. It's always great to have someone who's got the gift of the gab, in your circle of friends, because, you never know when you need to have that person sitting at a table to keep the conversation going. But don't confuse being able to work a room with building a strong network. What we all need for our careers are strong networks. So why I say I think introverts make the best network builders in this day and age, we are, it's a 24/7 always on mobile world. We are zapped for our attention. We're zapped for our time. We have, how many distractions do we have? How many things do we have? I'm not even going to ask you how many windows, you have open on the internet right now. We've got all this going on, and to cut through all that noise, you need to be intentional, you need to be considerate, you need to be focused, you need to be deliberate. And I think those are introverts. One of my favorite case studies in my book, let me just dive into this one a little bit, because beyond being an introvert, it's a really great case study for anyone who is thinking about their career and where they're going to go. So the interview is with a guy by the name of Joe Styler. Joe is at GoDaddy, the big internet provider. He started there as an entry-level job. He and his wife had moved to Arizona. For her job, he has a degree in divinity. So I'd like to jokingly say that's what we all need to get, jobs into the internet age, right? A degree in divinity. So he went for, hey, GoDaddy was hiring, and he was in a customer service role. Like, thanks for calling GoDaddy. This is Joe. How can I help you? And he looked around the company and saw where the opportunities were and really focused on the skill sets and things that you needed to have to advance, because he realized, hey, this is a really great company to work for. And so Joe kind of set his heart and his eyes on one day landing in the aftermarkets group. And so aftermarkets is where you sell, .coms for, millions of dollars. And when you see like a .com that sells for some ridiculous sum of money, that's been sold through the aftermarket. And someone like Joe is the person who is, making that transaction happen. Anyway, so what Joe did to advance his career, and as I noted, he's an introvert, and not in a, kind of a, there's a scale of introversion. He's like a 10 on being really introverted. So what Joe realized was, okay, what is the skill set I have to learn? And what are the skills I need to build up to make this career move? And what are the relationships, both within the company and externally, that I need to develop if I am going to, at one point and it's someday, land a job in the aftermarket? So, what I'm sort of getting to in all of this is that intentionality. The ways to manage your discomfort in meeting new people is understanding why you're doing it. So for Joe, why am I going to a conference to meet a bunch of strangers? Oh, they're all in aftermarkets. And if I want to be in the aftermarkets industry, I need to be networking in the room and gaining the information and building relationships with others in my field. It didn't make networking a breeze, but it made it like the understanding of why you're exerting the energy and the time, and that just purposeful networking that I think someone like Joe typifies and exemplifies is something that all of us, regardless of personality type, should follow. But particularly for introverts, like, if someone sends you an article that says, here's the 10 ways that introverts can network more like extroverts, I want you to hit delete, or I want you to put it through the paper shredder and ignore it. But what I do want you to do is be really focused on what you want to do and realize that you may have to step out of your comfort zone to attend a big conference, or, to, lead a team, or to work across practice groups, or whatever it may be. If you need to do that in order to reach your ultimate career goal.
That's perfect. Can you give us some conversation starters for people like Joe?
Yes and no. And why I say yes and no is my fear was kind of like a list of like, hey, here's 10 icebreaker kind of things, is it sounds kind of robotic as opposed to being human. And as opposed to sort of thinking about, all right, why did I choose to attend this event? Or why did I want to talk to this person in particular? So that's where the kind of doing your research and understanding why you're in the room, so that you can begin to think about, what are the questions I would like to ask someone, or what is a way that I can get introduced to someone so I can find out more information. So take, for example, if you chose to attend a conference or an industry organization event for the first time because you really wanted to learn more about software engineering, and this was a group to go to. You've been told, you've done your research and you found out why this is a good group. You sort of found out more about, kinds of things that are talked about. You've signed up, you've registered, show up for your first meeting, or the first, event. And that's a great one to look at people who are organizing and extend your hand and say, hey, this is my first time here. I've heard a lot about this group. Who do you think I should meet? Because I'm really interested in learning about XYZ. That's where, you could sit down and other people, extend your hand and say the same thing. And that's where you could look at someone and say, how long have you been a member? How many meetings have you attended? What have you found of value, right? You sort of on a fact checking situation in that kind of scenario I've given as an example. So for everything, I would say, step back and understand why you've chosen to undertake the activity, or why you want to have that informational interview, so that you can come in prepared, and be prepared to, engage in that kind of conversation. In any time, I think, where we have the biggest fear with, what are we going to say, is when we are walking into a room full of strangers. And that's where I'm like, leverage the organizers. Ask them for introductions, or if it's an industry organization or, student organization where you're an active member, or you've just joined up, ask how you can help. Because if you're sort of anxious on how you're going to make conversation, rolling up your sleeves and being busy is a great way to get over that. Another story that's in the book, one of the people who made, some of the best, I'm going to say, sort of business leads and career leads that she needed for her new job. She showed up the first time at an industry event, saw that the name tag table was just a complete mess, and said, "Hey, can I give you a hand?" And the organizers were like, "Yeah, no problem." And as she said, she had 84 solid business leads by handing out the business card, the name tags. So, some of those things is like, there's some like little hacks in terms of getting around it, but don't think that there's like a one size list for every situation that you can pull out. Because again, people would be able to kind of smell that and go, "Oh, this feels fake."
And just authenticity part is most important. Our next question is, when networking, should your mindset going in be about actively pursuing a goal, like finding a job, or is it to listen and learn?
It's kind of both. I think you should enter into every networking situation understanding how it is a piece of a puzzle that hopefully all comes together at some point, that you can step back and say, "Oh my God, look at this. I had this marvelous career," or, "I attained this outcome." But listening and learning, that can be part of the goal. There is an element with networking that, there's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in direct proportion. But, you sometimes going in and saying, "You know what, my goal is to get a job, but I'm going to get closer," like thinking like a career fair. I'm going to get closer to hearing if I want to, have a job with that particular employer. I'm going to get closer to figuring that out by what they say, or what they say to others who are also talking to them, rather than me, thinking, "All right, I have to leave with 3 business cards and 3, guaranteed job leads," right? You may be pleasantly surprised by listening and observing and finding some kind of hidden gems in those situations. But also too, if there's a targeted employer you want to speak to, well, hustle your butt over there and speak to them. But I think you should walk into everything sort of having some kind of idea of why you're in the room, and then, listening and learning and seeing what else. Because sometimes if we're too narrowly focused, on one objective, particularly if you're early in your career and you're not kind of open to possibilities, if we can miss out on interesting things because we're so narrowly focused.
Definitely agree with that. I've seen that before at a networking event. Not the best way to go about it. Our next question is, how do you establish trust in the first meeting with the objective of seeking a referral at a later stage?
This is such, all these questions are like such great questions. You establish trust by being prepared. You establish trust by following up. You establish trust by realizing you're building a relationship. You're not just there for a referral. That's kind of, this is one of those questions where, kind of the layers and the depth, it looks like, so I almost have a visual, like a plant at the moment. You've got this idea of you want this one thing, all you can see is the above the soil. You see the, snowdrop, the whatever, the little plant popping up. But there's all these roots and things underneath, and this depth of a relationship, and someone who is going to use their social capital, their relationships, why should they exert it for you? So you can't come in, even if there is on the appearance, on the outside, sort of a transactional outcome. When you're looking for something like that, you've got to come in with a long-term mindset, and being sort of considerate and patient and cognizant of that. And that's how you build the trust.
And what about recruiters? How do you approach a recruiter on LinkedIn to build meaningful connections?
Well, I'd say first off with a recruit, make sure you've got, listen, if you reached out to a recruiter on LinkedIn, you're probably going to do it through like LinkedIn InMail. Before they respond to you, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile. So I'd say before you even reach out to a recruiter, make sure your LinkedIn profile is completely maximized out. Make sure that you've, reached out and you've made connections, so that you're not just some sort of outline of a head and, no details. Like, what are the details of your summer jobs? What are the details of some of the school projects? What are the details of some of the volunteer things or community or sports teams? Like, use experiences, use the, community service, use the awards, use all those features on LinkedIn. I'm less concerned about, having, recommendations and things from people on LinkedIn. I'm more concerned about the words and the text that you put in there. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile, the details match your resume, because even if you get through the LinkedIn hurdle that they want to talk to you and you have to send them a paper resume, a physical resume, if those things don't line up, they're going to drop you cold. So, do that kind of foundational work. Then research the recruiters and make sure you're, let me just go back on one thing with your LinkedIn profile. Make sure it's using the keywords and things that you want to be found for, and the expertise that is, whether it's soft skills or hard skills that particular recruiters are, searching for. Find the recruiters who are, seeking the jobs in, the areas you're interested in, and then reach out to them. Because if you've got the talent and the skills that they can place, well, they want to talk to you. So do it. The other thing I would say with respect to recruiters is, if they reach out to you and it's not a job you're interested in, be respectful, be polite, be responsive to them to let them know that that's a very interesting opportunity, but not one that you're interested in. Let them know what you're interested in, because you never know what their next opening or next job they're going to be looking for. And if you have or know people in your own network who could be interested in the job, then to be able to say to them, hey, I've got some friends who would likely be interested in this role. Should I refer them to you? Should I refer their LinkedIn profiles to you? What would be the best way for me to get you their information? Because if you're helpful to a recruiter in doing their job, they're going to keep coming back to you. And, speaking from experience, that's a nice position to be in.
Great. And our next question is, how would you maintain a connection with someone over a long period of time?
Yes, I would say you just do it. Realize that people are busy, so it's not like you have to have coffee with someone every week or every month. Send a birthday card, send a Christmas card. Reach out every once in a while to let them know that you were thinking of them, or that you applied some advice that they gave you. Stay connected with them on LinkedIn, and notice their posts every once in a while. I mean, just yesterday I got a message on LinkedIn from someone I haven't talked to since like 2013. And he's like, whoa, you popped up in my, my LinkedIn, stream. I checked out all the things you're doing. This is what I'm up to, and I'm about to retire, and we should chat. And it was really enthusiastic and lovely to have this person reach out. So realize that we're busy, and it doesn't take much to warm up a friendship that, was previously maybe a stronger one, or a relationship you had with a colleague when you used to work together, or a classmate, or, dorm mate, or whatever it may be. So you don't need to do much, kind of little drips of information over time, but little drips of information over time. If back in the day you were, a good friend, a strong colleague, a decent, decent classmate, shared notes, whatever, kind of the case may be. And that maybe goes back to an earlier answer when I said, I think of networking as how you show up every day. If you've showed up every day for your network, those lengths of time in between contact are, it's okay. It's not as tragic as then if you show up, looking for help from your network and
Thanks.
you were never
I really
there for
like
them
that answer.
back when,
and I'm
things were
excited
good.
to say, Kelly, it looks like we have some extra time to take in some questions from the chat. So our first question is, you are meeting someone you connected with for a coffee chat to discuss your interest in their line of work. What is expected of you?
That's just really where, go back to that answer we sort of had shared before, like do your homework. Like if someone says, yes, I'm happy to talk to you about my career, let's meet for, 20 minutes or 30 minutes or do whatever. Like, this is where like kind of good stalking on the internet, like go crazy and read everything about them, right? So that you can really zero in on some smart questions as opposed to asking them some things that you're thinking, wow, I just wasted 30 minutes of time. I could have gotten something better out of them. And, the thought balloon over the other person's head is they've just wasted 30 minutes of my time, right? Like if you can find the answer on the internet, find it, and then ask them something better, right? So for someone to say, gee, Kelly, this is really interesting, but I still don't understand, like I've seen your, looked at your profile, I read your book, but I still don't understand exactly what happened and why you were offered, this role as the interim CMO of a startup. Like, how did that happen? Like, you haven't given me all the details. Like, that is a good question, as opposed to, as I mentioned earlier, I know I can read about your career online. Why don't you tell me about yourself? So if you have a specific question, that's where like people are like really happy to help you, as opposed to, again, asking general stuff that all you can think. I can, sort of being someone who's been on the other side of those kind of conversations, you're just thinking, oh, good God, like, will this conversation end? And please let this person never call me again.
Great. I've never heard of good stalking before today, but I'll take your word for it.
Oh no, and it's funny, like like people, because I've asked people about it, and it's funny. It's like so many people are like, oh no, like I'm all out there on the internet. Like there's a reason we post this information out there. I'm not posting videos on YouTube so that I can watch myself later. It's like, here's information, people. Like whether it's me, whether it's a venture capitalist, whether it's an employer, they're putting information out there. Like, read up on it. Though it is funny, I had someone say to me once, they're like, you read my website? And I'm like, yeah, why else did you put it up there? Like, the information was there so I could ask you, and that's actually a good example. I was invited to an event from the YWCA of New York City. And I, kind of flattered that they had invited me, sort of thing with these sort of 100 women leaders in New York City. And it was this girls' event. And I was kind of wondering why I was there, like, kind of, maybe it's a self-deprecating Canadian sense of humor. I sort of thought, like, all right, you've got a supermodel, you've got an actress, you've got, these people, like, seriously, some big names. And then there's me. And I'm thinking, did you get down to the B list? Like, how did I get invited? But I said to one of the organizers later, I said, this was amazing. Thanks for inviting me. And by the way, could you tell me, can I talk to you sometime about your Girls Geek Club and this programming that you're doing? And they looked at me and they're like, you read our website? And I'm like, yeah. So what is this? And they're like, well, this is what it's all about. And I said, well, I know some people who could help. And then that led to me being their chief tech ambassador for 2 years and bringing more people from the tech community into the YWCA of New York City. So to increase inclusion and diversity and hiring, and also to, kind of give role models for these amazing young women who were studying STEM.
Got it.
So
our next question is, one thing that sometimes limits people from networking is the division and position level within an organization. So which approach works best for this type of situation?
So, and this is also where, like, I say this also too with audiences who are on the other end of the spectrum, kind of more senior people as well. You should be networking with everyone. I think networking in this day and age is 360. You never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. From someone very senior, it could be from someone who's listening to this webinar. Right now, there is, yes, a power imbalance. I think if you stay in the old mindset of networking, i.e., and I did a podcast episode on this, there's sort of that idea that you have to give the same thing in return when you're networking. And I think that holds younger people back, because you're like, oh my God, he's the CEO of the company. What can I give him? Who can I introduce him to? And that, I'm like, stop, take that old mentality and throw it in the trash can. Being prepared for a conversation, understanding why you want to meet with that person and what you want to ask them, being considerate of their time, being prompt and timely for a meeting, and then following up with them, the courteous follow-up that thanks them for the time, and then the follow-up after that lets them know what you did with their advice. That's all they're asking for. I mean, one of my friends who I interviewed in the book, who is, how often do you get to introduce a friend as an adventurer, an explorer? But anyway, I have one of those in my network. And, her pet peeve when she introduces people is when people don't let her know what happens. And so when I'm thinking, younger people, when you're networking with someone more accomplished, listen, if they're taking the meeting, it's because they want to help you. If they're taking the meeting, it's because they want to impart information to you. You don't have to make an introduction. You don't have to, you don't have to ask the silly question, now what can I do for you? You don't need to do that. What you need to do is be really appreciative of the advice, and you need to let them know what you do and what the outcome is. So if they make an introduction that leads to you getting an internship or your first job, circle back and let them know that happened. That's what you need to do. Relieve yourself of the notion and the guilt that you have to give them.
That's why once I was told that, like, the reason I'm here is because once I was in your shoes, and that made me realize that everyone was at your spot at one time, and sometimes they're just thankful for that, and they're willing to give back because of it.
Right. I very much think that, when people ask me if I'll be there, meet for them, or kind of mentor in that regard, and they look at me like, what can I do for you? And I said, you will do this for somebody else in the future. This is how we can continually extend the hand down. Like I said, you don't need to do anything for me right now. At some point in your life, you will help someone else, or you'll think of something to help me. But right now, this is how we give back. Like, just keep that more senior person, apprised of what goes on, and being respectful and appreciative of what they do for you, even if the advice is kind of crap. Be respectful, and that's all you need to do. And the other thing I'll add on this, because part of my career, after practicing law for 11 years, and then I was in law firm management for 5.5. And for 4 of those years, I was the manager of professional development for a global law firm. And I had to organize, as part of my job, I had to organize the new associate orientation. And that always involved all the new US hires coming to New York for a week of training programs and things, professional development programs, substantive legal programs. And there was always a reception with the partners in the New York office. On that day that we had that reception, I would say to the new associates, I said, here's the deal. We have a week of training programs. There is one day I demand that you wear a suit, because lawyers have now gone much more casual, like the rest of the world. I'm like, there's one day I demand you wear a business suit and business attire. And why I used to do that was the partners every year would say to me, Kelly, that was our most intelligent group of associates. And it's because everyone's wearing a suit. Right? I'm just like, they're all wearing suits. Like, give me a break. You say this every year. The other piece of it, the other piece of it with these partners, because I was like, all right, I want all the associates, I want you to make a good impression, right? So when you're meeting someone more senior, kind of think about how do I dress for that future job? Like, I want their corner office or whatever it is. Like, how do you dress for that, right? The other piece on this to sort of say, like, you're worried about meeting them, they're also worried about meeting you. So the half hour or so, and this happened every year, Neha, every single year this happened. I would have the half an hour before the reception started. I was like a crazy banshee running through the law firm, cajoling all the senior partners to get their butts upstairs to the reception. And they'd be like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Am I going to have to talk to them? And I'm like, so realize when you're meeting someone more senior, chances are they're equally nervous and equally anxious about networking with you. So, kind of chill out and relax a bit. Realize we're all human.
That
we're
makes
all
me
anxious,
feel better, at least.
Kind of roll with it.
Next question is a combination of two. What counts as a networking event, and do you recommend going to a networking event if you're an introvert?
So I think everything is a networking event. Riding an elevator, taking the subway, getting on the TTC, whatever it may be. I think, how you text your friends, everything's networking, and everything can possibly be an opportunity to build a stronger connection. Should you go to networking events if you're an introvert? Yeah. But should you go to every single one? No. Go back to our conversation earlier about, Joe Styler, and hopefully the people asking the introvert questions were ones who were lucky enough to get copies of my book, because Joe's case study is in there, and it's a good one. I think it's page 75, if my recollection is correct. But like, understand why you're going to those events. I mean, I'd say this for whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert. When someone says to you, hey, Neha, you should attend, I think the next thing out of your mouth is not, oh, where do I register? It's, tell me more. Tell me more about this event. Why do you find it valuable? How long have you been going? Tell me about the people you like, tell me about the speaker, tell me about who's there, tell me, almost like a 4-year-old, tell me why. Because you need to align that event and that information, those facts from that other person, into your own life. Like, how does that event align with your own career goals? How does it align with your own time and personal commitments? If someone says, oh, you need to join this student committee, it'll be really helpful for your career. Well, tell me more. Because what you may find is, oh, it's the same people you already share a dorm room with, so no, you don't need to go and join that committee. Or you may find that the time commitment is such that there's no way you can do it with all the lab work you need to do with your chemistry degree, whatever the case is. So whenever someone says you should attend something, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, ask some questions and say, tell me more. Tell me more. And that, I think is always a good way. I just want to say one thing too, and I realized this in writing my book. We talk about introverts and extroverts. There's a third category. And the third category is ambiverts. And I think more of us are ambiverts. I discovered I am an ambivert. I may display at times as an extrovert, and other times I may display as an introvert. Ambiverts get our energy from other people. And so think about a situation when you've walked into a room and you're like, oh my God, I found my tribe. And you're energized and you're enthusiastic by the experience. Okay. Think about other times where you've walked into a scenario, whether it's a conference, an event, a lecture, a holiday party, whatever it may be, and you've never been happier than to have your mobile phone so you could stick your face in it and ignore everybody, right? So you're likely an ambivert, and you need to pay attention if you're an ambivert. And I think more of us are on that spectrum that way. You need to pay attention on where and how you get your energy, and understand when you're going to have to exert more energy because you really need to go and do those things. And other times understanding where can I make better choices and better selection when networking, that it plays to giving me more energy versus
you taught me a new word.
energy
Thank
out
you.
of me.
I did not know what that was before this.
I didn't like until I was writing my book. I knew nothing about ambiverts. Let me give you an example from an event that I attended this past week. We talk about like what's the purpose in attending. So I went to this event, and my purpose as attending was the first live summit that an organization called The Plug was holding. And Sherelle Dorsey, the founder of The Plug, which focuses on the Black innovation economy, Sherelle is a friend. And she and I've done a lot of things over the years working together. And so if someone said to me, why are you here? My answer is, I'm here to support Sherelle. And that was my intent. And I went for that. Did I need to leave with 3 or 4 business cards? No. Did I need to leave with 2 or 3 new insights? No, I was there for one purpose only. I was there to support her. I was there to support, her work, her company, her entrepreneurial, venture. That I've now left with a handful of new contacts, a whole bunch of new insights after 3 or 4 hours of attending the summit. That's a bonus to me. But I think that example maybe ties into some of the things we've talked about today, like, what's a good icebreaker question? Well, I'm here to, someone saying to me, hey, who are you and why are you here? I'm like, I'm here to support Sherelle. Why are you here? There was a conversation. Also, knowing why I was there let me off the hook for feeling the need that I needed to do anything else than that one goal, which was to support her. And there we go. Like, sometimes I think we can try and we can put too much pressure on ourselves. And for me, I find by knowing why and understanding why we're undertaking a networking activity.
Our next question is, what is the power of reputation? This person feels like, this person, my favorite part about webinars. This person feels like they're strong in relationship building and they can take pride in their work, but the concept of reputation feels a bit ambiguous.
It is kind of. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question this way. We have 3 assets in life. We have our relationships, we have our reputation, and we have time. And time is our non-renewable asset, and that's why you need to be careful and respectful of people's time. Relationships and reputation, we can grow and expand. But all of those are like kind of a 3-legged stool that need to kind of work together to get networking right. You can have great relationships. You can be, respectful of people's time. But, if your your reputation sucks. Your reputation is how you show up for other people. Your reputation is how you value, their expertise, their relationships, their time. Your reputation is how you invest in your own career. Your reputation is, it's kind of everything. It may seem ambiguous, but it's this thing you're going to, like, how do people talk about you when you're not in the room? And your reputation is one of those things. You got to show up every day and think about how you're building, how you're growing. When we talk about, being a lifelong learner and the importance of investing in yourself, that's part of your reputation. How you treat other people, how you manage other people, how you show up on time for whether it's a part-time job or, your dream career. That's part of your reputation. How you keep your desk, how responsive you are on emails. That's part of your reputation. And that's like, again, it's that thing that, how do people think of you? How do they talk about you when you're not in your room? What are the things that they would put in a 360 review or performance review? That's all part of your reputation. It's why people want to take a meeting with you when they don't know you. It's why someone would exert and spend their own social capital to make an introduction or write you a referral letter. It's because they're betting their reputation.
Great. And we have one last question for the day, and it's, how do you make an impressionable introduction?
Okay, this is sort of an interesting question. Is it's like, are you meeting someone, or are you making? So let's assume. What do you think, Neha?
I would
Shall I
assume it's a
assume
first-time
that someone
introduction, and
is
I would
meeting
assume
someone
in
for the
terms of
first time?
like maybe level, maybe they're a little bit lower in terms of like maybe entry level versus manager, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is also too, like, where you can get information to know, what's the right way and the right time to meet someone. When I think about back in the day when I was, working at a law firm in Toronto, um, sort of being observant and watching and understanding how somebody else's day is going. Because part of this thing with networking is you want to be heard. So how does the other person listen? And what's going on in their life? So that's how you can make an impressionable introduction, right? Or this is where understanding and making a relationship with gatekeepers, so they could say to you, oh, by the way, the best time of day to meet with her is this time. So when I think of, back when I was, right out of law school and working in Toronto, there was one partner who I adored working for because I was very observant of the pattern of his day and what went on with his life. And when I found out a bunch of my colleagues hated, like they literally hated working with this guy. And my first question to them when I found this out, I said, why do you not like him? And they said this, that, and the other thing. And John was kind of funny. He used to grade like our legal documents, like we were still in school. And then when I would go in and see him, he would like, I gave you a B this time. And he'd laugh and tell me why. And he was the greatest mentor in that regard. But anyway, I said to these associates, I said, why don't you like him? And then I said, hold on a second. What time of day do you go see John? And then they told me they used to go and see him at like 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon. I said, fatal mistake. This guy, so this was back in the 90s. This is like before Blackberries. Like this was way like before the internet, before like this is the Stone Age of, I think we had maybe Palm Pilots and voicemail, like maybe a pager. Like we're talking about, yeah. Like this was back in the day, people. This is like maybe when you're like early internet, maybe early intranet. We had word processing. That's why we had computers. Like seriously, this is way back in the day. This guy had like 4 children and liked to get home to have dinner with them. If you wanted his attention and you wanted him to be generous and have capacity to deal with your problems, you needed to go and see him in the morning, not in the afternoon. Late in the afternoon, he had one thing on his mind. How do I get the right train out of here so I get home, and have dinner with the kids, help my wife get them to bed, and then I can get back to work. So, this whole idea of how you make, that kind of strong impression, put yourself in the other person's shoes and really get granular about it in that regard, in terms of thinking like, how are they going to receive this message? When and how will they have the right amount of time to spend with me? I'll give you one other example. It was at an event for the New Yorker here in New York City, where I live, and the special kind of guest speaker was Malcolm Gladwell. So of course the organizers were like, Kelly, you're Canadian, he's Canadian, you're going to meet him, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm kind of holding back. I'm like, there's some other people who want to see him and meet with him, and they're kind of jumping in their shoes to meet him. I said, introduce them first. And it was very intentional on my part because I wanted to watch and observe how Malcolm greeted other people, right? Because he's kind of an accomplished dude, right? And what's his interaction? When was he responsive? When was he polite? And when was he dismissive? And it was really fascinating for me to watch that and gather that information before I was introduced to him. So you want to make a good impression, like really get in the mindset of the other person. You can't.
I can agree. I have a coworker who, if you book a meeting before 10 a.m., she is not a happy camper, and she's not awake for my meeting.
Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, what is their communication preference? When is a better time? This is also, again, I'll go back to I said the word gatekeeper. Like, who are the other people who work with this person you want to meet? How can you get not trying to be smarmy about it or something, or just being able to say, hey, I'd really like to talk to so-and-so about this topic. Do you think they'd be responsive to it? If so, like, when's a good time for me to approach them? Like, what, asking those questions, or, you know, to be able to find out, you know, let me go back to the Malcolm Gladwell example. You know, a word of warning to everyone: never go up to Malcolm Gladwell and tell him, you know, gush and fawn over how much you like one of his books. He hates it. Like, not that he hates it, you don't like, you gush and love his book, but he doesn't want that in person. Like, if you, it was like hilarious. Someone was like, "Oh, Malcolm, you're the greatest, and I love this book, and Outliers was the best thing ever written." And he just like nodded and then literally turned his back to the person to meet someone else. I was cracking up like from 5 feet away. But I was like, oh, he wants a polite introduction. He wants to have engaged exchange over something, you know, that he considers intelligent, but just kind of, you know, being a sycophant, you know, doesn't rock his world. So, you know, find out what makes the other person tick, and then design your approach.
All right, Kelly, that's all the time we have today. And I want to say thank you so much for your time, and to everyone for tuning in. If we didn't get to your user questions, we weren't able to get to all of your questions, but I hope you still found this helpful. And I'm happy to say, if we miss your question, feel free to reach out to us on Prepped and we'll answer the question there. And Kelly, before we go, I wanted to ask, do you have any final thoughts or tips that you'd like to share?
Listen, let me kind of just share this one. We are all going to make mistakes in our human interactions. You know, just, you know, own it. Admit a mistake, learn from it, and move on. It's not fatal. The only thing sort of fatal is, you know, if you stop building human relationships, that's the only thing that's fatal when it comes to network building.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, and have a great day, everyone.